Barbara or Freya, is it?
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Froggatt with Councillor Bates as substitute, Councillor Hobson with Councillor G as substitute, Councillor Bull with Councillor Edwards-Walker as substitute, Councillor Nash, Councillor Buckler with Councillor Buttle as substitute,
And we just haven't heard from her, have we?
and Councillor Linthwaite.
We have Councillor Linthwaite isn't present.
Oh, right. No, she isn't, is she? That's right. Okay, right. Fine, thank you for that. Right, second item, approval of minutes of the previous meeting, pages 5 to 16. That was on the 27th of January. So, has anyone got any... that was a special meeting, of course.
Yeah, we propose and seconded for both, yeah?
We will, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would someone like to propose and second that those are accepted? Right, Councillor Dobbs and Councillor Lees. Right, thank you.
Is that
I can
both?
vote, please, and everybody happy with the...
Is that for both lots of minutes?
There's only one, I've only got one lot.
I think there was two lots of minutes, 16th and 27th.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, actually, because it does state that there's another set of minutes, but I don't have the minutes on my report. I don't know if that's... if anyone else has found the same problem. Yes. Was it? Oh, right. 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 Very good. Okay. Is everybody happy with those two sets of minutes then? Very good. Thank you. Vote again. Possibly so. I've not got those minutes personally, but anyway. Yeah. Page 11 on my agenda is
27th is page
present. Got a different page 11 in that case.
Should we show that, yeah?
Right, yes.
So it's those minutes.
Yes, 27th of January, yes, I've got those. And the previous one was 16th of January. That's what's changed the order of pages, I think. So shall we vote again then on those two sets of minutes then?
Agreed?
Same proposer and seconder? Right, very good. Okay, thank you. All in favour then? Okay, right, thank you. Right. Public participation. We have got several contributions actually. You've probably demanded the questions from members of the public. The first one was from Pamela Hattersley. Do you just want me to read the response or make the response or read out the question as well?
The question and the response.
Yes. So the question from Pamela Hattersley is, I'm very concerned to learn that officers are requesting approval from the Environment Committee to use delegated authority to spend up to £200,000 on land, either auction or privately, for the purchase of a permanent traveller site, which could potentially bypass scrutiny from the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group. Given the recent dishonest actions surrounding the handling of Hasker Farm and the subsequent formal complaints to the Ombudsman from residents and our former MP, I believe this is not a democratic approach to resolving the issue. And the response is that the report to be considered at this evening's meeting is in response to a previous request made by this committee that a mechanism for the potential acquisition of land at auction be formulated and presented back to members for consideration. It will be for members of the committee to determine whether they consider the proposal to be acceptable or not. In responding, I must challenge your claim about dishonest actions and your reference to complaints submitted in respect of this council's consideration of a potential permanent traveller site at Hasker Farm. The complaints relating to Hasker Farm were independently investigated and none of them were fully upheld. Furthermore, the same complaints have since been separately progressed to a higher level, the local government ombudsman, and dismissed. Right. The next question is from Gemma Craddock. Dear members of the Community Environment Committee, I strongly object to the proposal which would see council officers given delegated authority to spend up to £200,000 of council funds on land at auction. Rather than reducing oversight, the council should be strengthening the safeguards to ensure public money is spent transparently and responsibly. I urge the council to reject this proposal and instead commit to rigorous due diligence, ensuring all financial decisions are subject to full democratic oversight. And the response is that the report to be considered at this evening's meeting is in response to a previous request made by this committee that a mechanism for the potential acquisition of land at auction be formulated and presented back to members for consideration. It will be for members of this committee to determine whether they consider the proposal to be acceptable or not. And the third question is from Joe Wildgoose. At the full council meeting in December, it was decided to apply for use of the old station close car park in Roseley as a temporary traveller site, but only from March to October, with the family in question being sited at Matlock Bath from November to the end of February. Why does the planning application 25/00200 not specify occupation only over these months? And the response to that is, a planning application has been submitted to seek change of use for a total period of 2 years on occupation at Old Station Road Car Park, Roseley. The periods of use for the purpose of traveller site is, if planning is approved, was tabled and agreed at the extraordinary council meeting of the 9th of December last year. I would therefore like the chair of the Community Environment Committee to respond fully to the original question as to why the dates are missing from the actual planning application. My response is, as previously advised, the planning application has been submitted, seeks change of use for a total period of 2 years on occupation at Old Station Road Car Park, Roseley. The periods of use for the purpose of traveller sites, if planning is approved, was tabled and agreed at the extraordinary council meeting of the 9th of December last year. If planning permission were to be granted for this development, the period of occupation would be limited by the imposition of planning conditions. And the fourth question from Victoria Friend. Dear Committee, please can I have the following questions read out and answered during the meeting on Thursday, and also emailed to me. We've been told by officers that the planning applications for the temporary traveller sites at Matlock Bath and Middleton My Worksworth will not be submitted until later in the year. Who made this decision and why, when all 4 sites were approved for planning in a block vote at the full council meeting on the 9th of December? And secondly, what is the District Council's plan for the traveller family if the application for Roseley is rejected, when the planning application for the alternative site at Middleton My Worksworth will not even be submitted until later in the year? And the response is, at the council meeting on the 9th of December, members did not stipulate that all planning applications should be submitted simultaneously or determined simultaneously. While work has been undertaken on progressing these sites, those applications that are considered to be capable of being submitted now have been submitted. The remaining sites will follow as soon as all necessary pre-application work has been completed. Secondly, the Council has made no other decisions other than those taken on the 9th of December. In the event that a site previously identified cannot be brought into use, for whatever reason, the Council will need to consider that matter at the appropriate time. And the fifth question from Tim Simcox. With regard to the proposed temporary traveller site at Station Close, Roseley, will the District Council release their full pre-application feedback and any dialogue with the local planning authority prior to the old Station Close application being submitted? The response to that is, an application for pre-application advice does not constitute a formal application for permission. It is a means for individuals to provide information voluntarily in order to identify issues early enough to take these into account in any formal planning application that may be submitted. As part of this request, landowners and developers have an expectation that information will not be disclosed more widely prior to the submission of an application. The Council does not therefore publish pre-application advice from any prospective applicants till this falls under Regulation 12(5)(f) of the Environmental Information Regulations. This states that information can be withheld where its disclosure would have an adverse effect upon 1. The interest of the person who provided the information, where that person was not under and could not have been put under any legal obligation to supply it to that or any other public authority, did not supply it in circumstances such that that or any other public authority is entitled, apart from these regulations, to disclose it, and finally has not consented to its disclosure. The information provided is therefore exempt from disclosure. This is a position which has been tested and upheld in similar cases considered by the Information Commissioner's Office, ICO. Where an application for planning permission is submitted, there is a statutory right to object to those proposals. However, there is no such right prior to an application being received by the local planning authority. Those are the questions from members of the public and the responses. So we now move on to interests. Have any members got any interests they'd like to declare? Councillor Franks.
Yes, I sit on the board of Derbyshire Dale CVS, which should exclude me from participating in the discussion and vote on item 6 in relation to UKSPF.
Okay, right. Thank you, Councillor. Any others? No?
Just a question,
Yes,
Martin.
Councillor Whitehead.
So if I'm linked with a charity that's received funding from UKSPF, would that constitute a conflict?
What is the link?
Or I am the sort of the managing director of the Grand Pavilion, which has just received some funding.
Oh, right.
It might be better if he doesn't participate.
Yes, but Barbara thinks that it may be better if you don't participate in that particular debate then.
Yeah, it's fine. Do I need to leave the room or?
It might be better if both yourself and you council leave the room when the item is
Okay.
being called.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Councillor Lees.
And Councillor Lees as well.
Item 9, Chair, Ashbourne Reborn.
Yes.
I do sit on the Ashbourne Reborn panel. Am I okay to take part in this?
Again, probably not.
Probably not is the advice. And Councillor Dobbs the same?
Yes, Chair.
What is the panel, Councillor?
This is the
Ashbourne Reborn.
Yeah,
the board.
but what's the panel that you're talking about?
Programme
Programme
board.
board.
For the council?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine then.
Oh,
It's
right.
more if it's external. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure you're relieved about that.
Yeah. I've got one more.
One more, yes, Councillor G.
Yeah, I think I'm still a member of the CVS, but I'm not a board member.
Right.
For the avoidance of doubt, I'd do the same as the other councillor.
Yes. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not. I've got no.
So you're not a director or?
No, that's what I mean. I'm just.
Yeah. Oh, you're probably all right then.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Any further declarations? No?
Yeah, got a bit of a flurry there, wasn't it?
Right. We don't normally get that many, do we? Next one, item 5, is questions pursuant to Rule of Procedure number 15. So my answers to questions from members who've given the appropriate notice.
Yeah, you've got
So-
this.
Yes, that's right. So the first one is Councillor G.
To read this out.
You can do.
Would that be
I've got it.
appropriate?
The members have got it and I've got it, but
Yeah.
you can
right,
read it out if you want to.
yeah.
Yes.
Could the chair explain why council members were not formally informed that government have made available funding to all district and borough councils to undertake a Greenbelt review? Councils across the country have taken advantage of this funding to support their local plans. In light of this information coming to light, could the chair now allow all members to debate and decide whether it is an appropriate option for Derbyshire Dales District Council to undertake a Greenbelt review to support the local plan review?
Right, thank you, Councillor G. The answer is, or response is, in December 2024, the government announced that it would make funding available to local authorities to help them undertake a Green Belt review. The funding was only available to local authorities that have an area of Green Belt within their boundary. As Councillor G is aware, there is no Green Belt designation in Derbyshire Dales, therefore you cannot review something that does not exist. As such, the District Council was not an eligible authority to seek such funding. Furthermore, as Councillor G and members will be aware, at Council on the 19th of March this year, his proposed motion to halt the review of the local plan and undertake a Green Belt review was defeated. Is that okay, Councillor?
Not completely okay, because I was informed at one of our subcommittee meetings that a Greenbelt review, it is possible to look into it under exceptional circumstances. And I believe those circumstances are available or there in Derbyshire Dales. So it was clear, I did ask the question to senior officers, and you know, the fact that we haven't got a green belt, to me, is exceptional circumstances because we're not able to protect ourselves against unwanted development. So this would be a perfect, you know, green belt reviews, I'm fully au fait with them. I know that in the circumstances where you've already got one, it might actually need reviewing to allow more building in green belt areas, but with us, we've never had one. So I think it would actually be more appropriate rather than less. And I'd challenge that opinion. Yeah, I'd like it to be clarified with officers whether or not it is possible for a council that hasn't historically had a green belt area to challenge that and implement one, or at least do a review to see if that is actually possible.
Thank you. Well, we'll look into that and come forward or come to you with a response in due course. Thank you, Councillor. The next question was from Councillor Sue Hobson to me again, as Chair of the Community Environment Committee. The report asks that the committee consider if the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group has completed its work. As there have been no approved planning applications for temporary sites and no permanent sites have been brought forward, does the Chair accept that the work of this working group is not complete? And does he stand by his previous statements that there should be a working group with more than the existing 4 councillors on it? The response is that the report to be considered at this evening's meeting is intended to prompt debate and consideration of this issue. It's not within my remit as Chair of the committee to determine whether members wish to continue with the existing arrangements or not. That is a matter for members of this committee to determine. So that's fairly straightforward, I think. But obviously, in due course, there'll be tonight, in fact, there'll be a debate on that. I'm in 2 minds about the size of the committee of the working group anyway, or was, and I suppose I still stick by my view then, but if members decide tonight to disband the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group, then that will not be relevant anyway. So thank you for the question to Councillor Hobson. Right, that concludes that item. And so now we're on to item 6. So welcome Councillor Linthwaite to the meeting as well. Right, this is UK Shared Prosperity Fund, UKSPF 25 to 26, and the Economic Development Plan updated evidence base for 2025 onwards. So it's a report of the Director of Place and Economy, and the report author is Amanda Brown. So would Amanda like to address this and give us a resume of a rather complicated report, to be honest, which no apologies expected for that, but because it is a complicated subject. But Amanda, you'd like to...
Thank you, Chair.
outline
I'll endeavour to bring some clarity to it.
Very good, thank you.
The report before you is explaining the delivery that we've had on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural England Prosperity Funds, the REP funding to date. That programme closes on Monday, the 31st of March, and it was funded by EMCCA and DEFRA. So within the report, we have a summary to date. These figures will change very slightly as we come in that we're in the last few days, and the report was done a couple of weeks ago. So clearly the sort of last 2 or 3 weeks, we've been finalising payments to projects and pulling in the final report. So there will be some slight changes as we move forward. However, it was we do need to bring this report to committee tonight to look to the future, as very fortunately we had at the beginning of March confirmation of future funding, which is just a one-year extension to UK Shared Prosperity funding, which is coming through the East Midlands Combined County Authority. So the report outlines the delivery to date, which has been a successful programme. It's really made a difference across the area, both jointly through for communities and for the businesses who've had, a very difficult time over the last couple of years coming out of COVID and the recovery. So we've been able to supply a number of grants. We've supported over 88 businesses to have investment to both create jobs but also sort of look to the future and their sustainability and give us a good base to move forward. We've had successful delivery, particularly through Derbyshire Dales Council for Voluntary Services, the CVS, to deliver some community grants, which again has made a really, really good impact for a huge number of people, far more than we initially anticipated. So we've got an outline there. The full evaluation, clearly we can't complete the evaluation until the end of the programme, and work will continue into the coming year to the end of this financial year to pull forward and see the impacts of the programme, because businesses that have had grants, communities that have had grants are still collating information on that impact. So that will continue through to December this year. So I've outlined where we are with the programme that we've actually achieved. The evaluation results, I've given you a brief sort of summary of the evaluation at 2.2 within the report. The full evaluation, as that's completed during April, will be made available, but the early indications are very positive. We did some survey work with beneficiaries from the Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural England Prosperity Fund, and that's come back really, really positive. So on the basis of that, we also commissioned a piece of work to do an economic development refresh on the economic plan, which a number of you were able to attend an online meeting we held last Thursday, I think it was on the 20th, to look at the initial findings. That report has been finalised following input from councillors, which was, a really good discussion was held, and we've gone away in those comments are going back into the final report, which will be available early next week. Unfortunately, it wasn't finalised for tonight's meeting, but that will be made available. And the direction of travel, the indications are the changes over the last couple of years is that to continue an extension and to look to a future programme, which is just a one-year funding allocation, that we stay in the same direction. We continue to support through our Derbyshire Dales Business Advisor businesses. We put in a small grant fund, again, along the same lines that has made an impact to date for a further 12 months, and that we also take forward an element of community development along with supporting some capital investment from our existing capital programme. So the report is sort of detailed and factual, but I think it's sort of winding up one programme and then setting the scene for where we need to go next. The extension to the programme came very late. We were only aware of the actual allocation and what that would be in terms of revenue and capital funding at the beginning of this month. So we've put together an outline of a programme that will go to the UK Shared Prosperity Board following the feedback that we've had from the business survey and also the development plan refresh, which is a broad programme. We're in the position we have to go back to EMCCA by the end of next week to confirm our our delivery, what we're wanting to do with it. So we have got a really limited time frame to do that. But I think what we've put together is a one-year programme that will continue and will meet with the outputs and the outcomes that we want, and it also fits with the priorities of the council. Rather than going into detail around it, do you want me to take questions before we move to the recommendations?
Yes, well, thank you for that very succinct report, Amanda, and also for all the work you've done on this, because it is quite stressful, I guess, as all sort of government funding is, with very tight timescales and so on. So, have members got any questions in? Yes, Councillor Linthwaite.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was at the meeting the other week, which was really fascinating. There was a huge amount of information that I didn't know about, and a huge amount of work that's gone on and had really successful outcomes, so thank you for that. I was particularly interested in the business support element, and we've given grants and advice and support in various ways for all kinds of aspects for business, whether it was securing employment for new staff or securing existing staff, new equipment, helping move to premises, all that sort of thing. I'm just wondering, with the new money that's coming in, is there any way that we can sort of target our farming community, given the stresses that they're under at the moment? They're businesses, like all the others. Is that something that we can target somehow?
Well, you're absolutely right, they are businesses, and we've always treated the farming community as businesses. General farming costs and the day-to-day operation, there is support through DEFRA to an extent, and the funding that we have, we can't use that to support that sort of direct agricultural input. What we have done over this previous programme, and the intention is we will continue to do it over this next programme, is funding is made available to all the farming community as businesses, particularly around the diversification work. We've got a couple of businesses, farming businesses, that we've supported in the current programme. We've always worked very closely with the NFU and the Farming Life Centre to promote and to keep those links with our farming community. It's been a very tough time, I think, for them over the last couple of years. The number of diversification projects we've had come forward has been relatively low, but we have continued to, promote through that. And as we move into this next year, then they will be able to apply for funding. The other aspect is the Rural England Prosperity Funding, which is DEFRA funding. Again, is clearly, we're a rural community, is open to the farming community. We haven't had information on what allocation we'll get as of yet, but they're more than able to apply, and we do fully support them, and our business advisor will also work with them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Amanda, for the report. As became apparent during the Teams meeting, clearly some businesses are not aware that this is on offer. So if I can do a sort of hypothetical question, to what extent is it limited by the amount of funding or limited by the amount of people actually applying for it who qualify?
We have made it as widely available as we possibly can. We've used all the sort of publicity avenues there are. We do have a really healthy pipeline of projects, of businesses coming forward, but businesses of all types, it has to be the right time for them. They have to have their cash flow in place. They have to do that preparatory work. So we certainly haven't had any indication that businesses have been missed. But funding, when it's opened, it has to hit a business or a community, if you've got a community doing a development, at the right time that they're looking to pull forward a project, that they've got their resources all in line as well. So it's about, we're now in a position, you know, we've got some really good case studies that we can use to promote, and that's always really the best way to promote, so that businesses and communities can see, well, they actually did that, so maybe we can do that. How do we do it? Who do we engage with? At the start of a programme, you haven't got that information, so it has to build. This 1 year extension, I think we will have high demand and we'll be fully committed in no time. But again, there's wider economic impacts that do play into grant funding.
Thank you, Amanda. Next question is from Councillor Buttle.
Martin, hi Amanda. When we had that presentation about the local area, it was pretty obvious there was a fairly massive difference in incomes between men and women. The gender inequality was huge, and I think we speculated at the time that a lot of this could be down to the fact that women are working in minimum wage jobs more frequently than men. And we were going to see if that was actually the case, and we were going to follow that up and hopefully come up with a plan to try and change those things. Is that actually possible? What can we do? Have we got any ideas how we would approach that? I'm not expecting an actual answer, but I definitely want to get it on the table.
Yeah. The gender inequality was really stark with the latest plan refresh that we have. The direction of travel that we have as council priorities is obviously to increase the wage opportunities that we've got and for higher value jobs. And that has to be irrespective of gender. I think it is a separate piece of work on how we actually, or do we actually target that. From where we're working from currently is that it's about raising the wage levels for all. We haven't specifically targeted gender at this point. I think the latest stats that have come out are very stark, and that does need further discussion further down the line. You know, you're absolutely right.
Thank you.
The next question or questioner on my list is Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. A good report, Amanda, thank you. In my ward of Worksworth, we're very fortunate we got some of the money last year for the Meadows project, which has made a big difference. But Worksworth it's the third largest town in the district. It's quite a big population. Worksworth Town Council run all the toilets, they run the markets, they run the playing fields, the cricket club, the bowls club. The district council doesn't have anything to put money out in that respect. And even the new skateboard park is run by the people of Worksworth. So Worksworth actually does a lot for the district. That's over towns like Matlock and Bakewell and Ashbourne get more funding for. So if the general maintenance, obviously this isn't for general maintenance, but if a project comes through, Worksworth should stand a better chance, because we aren't getting the money spent on Worksworth like other towns. So would that be a big advantage to Worksworth?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The work that goes on in communities across the whole of our districts by volunteers and you know, local projects is fantastic, and I think it's a massive strength of ours as a district across the whole. In terms of projects coming forward, then they are looked at on an individual basis, so whether they're coming through the Community Development Fund or whether they're coming through as businesses, they're looked at in terms of value for money, what they can deliver. The Worksworth did benefit from, you know, an application. It was an open call last year. Yeah, it was last year, to deliver the rejuvenation project on the Meadows, and that was taken on its face value, and it was assessed along with other projects that came in. So we would always look at everything in the round, if you like.
Just to come back, Worksworth were prepared for their Medis project. They got it all ready and ready to go, and it was we had to be spent before the end of March, weren't it, last year? So.
It did, and it's been I can't sort of overestimate the challenge that particularly our capital projects have had to actually deliver within what was a government time frame we were under, and it will be a challenge for this coming year. Because the funding that we have is almost £800,000 to deliver between the 1st of April, and we've not got it signed off yet. So it will probably be, by the time contracts are all agreed and things, it will be the end of April, to be delivered by the 31st of March 2026 is a really, really tight time frame, particularly for capital projects and works such as rejuvenation, the bus station that we've seen down at the bottom of Matlock. The timeframes that have been worked to are really, really tight.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. I can add to that. Sue and I had a look at or inspected the Meadows project last week, and we were very impressed by the progress on it. I'd not been aware of that site for many years, actually. So it's going to be certainly enhancing the local scene, I think, when it's finished.
Just, the project was made possible by the residents. Donated money to buy the land.
That's right.
The meadow wasn't in the town council's hands till the residents put together the money for it. So, it's a great community success.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor G.
Yeah, apologies if this is a different amount of money, but I attended the business day here that we had in the town hall, didn't we? Was it last year sometime?
October time, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I just wondered, the funding that was available for businesses to apply for, which I believe there was some sort of deadline at the end of February, because I was sort of muted that it was basically running out. Was that all spent?
Yes.
Yeah, so every penny of it was spent. Yeah, so that is the result, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it starts again. It starts to turn over.
Yeah. So we've got the new funding that will start from, well, as soon as we've got all the contracts and everything agreed and signed off. In reality, it will probably be the end of April. But what we've done as a small team is we've as businesses have come to talk to us, we're putting their business advisor in so that she can help them, so that they're ready to move forward when the funding is released.
Yeah, and I would thank you very much. That's a really good answer. It's perfect. Are we continuing on to debate after the question?
Well, now, if there are no more questions, then Councillor. Oh, you want to move recommendations?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I want to, Chair, colleagues, want to move recommendations 1 to 7, but I'd also like to put forward an additional recommendation, which relates to the points that Councillor Slack was making. But first, in moving recommendations 1 to 7, I do want to formally thank and congratulate our officers for the sterling work that they put in over the past 12 months in delivering these two programmes. And I think we should also extend our thanks as a committee and a council to the Council for Voluntary Service, who have done a major share of the work in working with the community. Essentially, it's the community that should benefit from these schemes as much as the council. Turning to the additional recommendation I'd like to put forward for your consideration, colleagues. When we look at the capital allocation proposed for this following year, you'll see that 175,000 of it is proposed to go to the council for council projects and 75,000 to the community. Council has 3 projects at 175,000, and the community has 75,000 divided by how many projects come forward. And as far as I'm aware, I think Amanda, there's a £10,000 limit on the capital projects that can come forward from the community. So there's quite a disparity between the money that the council's putting into our own projects and the capital money that's available to local communities. I think, as Amanda said, it takes time for projects to emerge and to be spent in the time frame that the government often makes available to project sponsors. But I think it's fair to say that while the next year is only a one-year programme, it's highly likely that there will continue to be this sort of funding available in the future. It might not be called UK Shared Prosperity Fund or REPF, but it will be a similar type of funding and probably on a similar scale, because the current government has given a commitment that it will continue to support initiatives in this way by way of the I'm sorry, I'm going to have to use this word, the Brexit dividend. So I do think it's important that local communities are made aware that this funding is likely to come forward in future, so that they themselves can have time to develop projects which are of benefit to local communities. We have a facility here because we have a professional team of officers whose job it is to look at a pipeline of projects, but local communities being smaller do need rather more time and rather more support to do it. They can't turn around projects in 6 months probably, let alone 3 months. So the more notice local communities have about the potential availability of such funding, the more likely it is that they can develop projects which we can then consider and hopefully take forward. I know in my own ward, two of our villages do have projects in the pipeline. Had I known about this funding and had they known about this funding, I'm quite sure that they would have potentially put those forward for consideration of major projects, because they're quite expensive projects. However, so what I would formally like to propose to you, colleagues, is there's an additional recommendation which says that the council in future publicises to local communities well in advance of the notification of funding similar to UK SPF or REPF, in order that they can develop projects or initiatives that could be considered for further funding support by the council. Would anyone like me to reread that?
We need a seconder for the first, and then we'll need a seconder for that as well.
Right, can I have a seconder for the recommendations 1 to 7? Councillor Linthwaite first, I think, there. And then a seconder for the additional item that, or recommendation that Councillor O'Brien has just put forward. Councillor Murphy, thank you. Right, would like to...
Can I just borrow that for the wording?
Yes. Have you got it written down, Councillor?
I've written down in my own inimitable scribble, but I can read it out to you. I'm afraid these days, when you play about on these devices, when it comes to using a pen, somehow you lose the art of writing. The council in future publicises to local communities well in advance of the notification of funding similar to UK SPF or REPF, in order that they can develop projects or initiatives that could be considered for funding support by this council.
Yeah, Councillor Linthwaite.
Sorry, Chair, could I just ask a question of Amanda? At the beginning of your talk, you mentioned that it was fairly late in the day that you had confirmation of the new tranche of money for the forthcoming year.
Yeah.
How does Councillor O'Brien's proposal fit in with, you know, if we create expectations, then there isn't any forthcoming money?
And that is the crux of the question, really. It's about raising expectations. I think communities are developing proposals and projects all the time. As you said, Councillor O'Brien, you've got a couple of projects in the development, and they're developing those with a view to finding funding from wherever, whichever sources. Derbyshire CVS particularly works very, very closely with councils to bring forward, and also Derbyshire Association of Local Councils and Rural Action Derbyshire to do some of that initial development work. So, those proposals and projects are coming forward. It is a really difficult one because if we don't know whether there's going to be a pot of £500,000 or £50, or so a lot of it is done on goodwill from the communities, and I think certainly raising when we do know that we've got funding coming through, that is raised and has been with this as soon as we knew and we'd got that information. So it is a real fine balance. It is a real fine balance, but we would always, when we do know we've got funding, we would make that available, and we'd make that the route that we're taking with it as widely available as we possibly can. But it is the time frames, and hopefully moving forward into the future, we have funding that will be coming. Some of it will be coming via EMCCA, some via central government. We will have more of a heads up, if you like, as to what's coming down the line, but certainly making it as publicly available as soon as we can is absolutely right, and the way that we would work.
Would you like to speak now as seconder of the motion of on the first 7 recommendations, Councillor?
No, I think that's fairly straightforward,
Right.
really. I was just concerned that we might be making a rod for our own back.
Right.
What I was thinking about really was the Matlock bus station project. Widely positive comments about it, apart from the fact that we didn't have enough money to do the loos. And so I could just see us finding ourselves in a similar situation if we're sort of creating projects and then maybe not have any money for it. That's all I was just concerned about.
Yeah, it is that managing expectations that is a real tricky line to walk, and we don't know, as any of us sat here, what future funding will be coming in 6 months, 12 months, 3 years. So yeah, there's no easy answer to it.
Councillor Murphy is seconder of the extra recommendation. Would you like to speak, make a contribution?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Peter for making this suggestion. This is on a different scale, but when you think about the levelling up monies, when that scheme was sort of announced and whatever, I personally think Ashbourne were in a good position because locally themselves, they'd actually started to think about the things they wanted to do in the town before levelling up money was ever considered. So I think it's a good idea to forewarn local villages and towns and whatever. There is this possibility, but if nothing else, if they start working on schemes and things they want to do in their areas and whatever, there are other sources for funding that they could approach. They could approach national lottery funding. There are some very generous commercial companies out there that give donations as well. So I think this is a very good idea. So thank you, Peter.
Councillor Murphy somewhat stole my thunder with what I was going to say. But yeah, I think Councillor O'Brien does make a good point. I think when you look back at Ashbourne Reborn, it was work that had already been done by Ashbourne Town team to develop a lot of the plans already for redeveloping the town centre, and the Methodist Church and other groups in Ashbourne who were putting really good creative plans together, even though they knew there was no funding necessarily there. They were hoping to bid for funding in the future, and that meant that when the opportunity came, they were able to take it. There is certainly a risk of raising false expectation. I think although I'm very much inclined to support it, we do need to be really careful how we promote it and to make sure that we make it very clear that there's no guarantees there. But if people want to have the best chance, if an opportunity comes up, it would be good to have plans in place, and then you've got a chance. But we've got to be careful not to oversell it. So, yeah.
No further councillors wishing to join the
Okay.
debate?
Could I just wind up then? Just
Oh, Councillor G, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should thank Boris Johnson for the levelling up funds that came towards Ashbourne and other towns locally, because I think that's where it came from. So well done to Boris Johnson.
So, Chair, just then to wind up my proposal. Thank you for those contributions, and I agree that we haven't to be mob happy in the way we go out, but I think perhaps we don't need to underestimate the fact that local communities, local parishes do understand issues like this. They're well aware of the frailty of availability of funding. But I would say that the council also has the same issue, but we set ourselves up a target of developing a pipeline of projects. So we give ourselves an advantage as a council. I'm not saying that's wrong, but we give ourselves an advantage of council because we've asked our officers to develop a pipeline of projects. So we're quite prepared to take the risk. So again, I think, you know, if we're careful and the way we encourage without being over enthusiastic, it can only be to the benefit of local communities.
Thanks, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor.
Just quickly, just to correct a misconception that some of these projects that are coming forward were pipeline projects from the community in Ashbourne. They've been taken on by the district council, but they came from the community. Friends of Ashbourne Park have bent my ear for forever about some of these.
It's been proposed and second. Oh, Councillor Chapman.
Thanks, Chair. Can we also extend our thanks to the great team involved with administering this project?
Yes.
Is that a declaration of interest?
We ought to minute that probably.
Recommendations 1 to 8.
Yeah. Right, if the proposers and seconders are happy, I'll take the 7 recommendations plus number 8 as well. So if everyone's happy with that, can we take a vote, please? All in favour? I think that's unanimous.
That's
Yes,
appreciated.
very good. Thank you, members. Right. Right, move on to item 7 when our absent members are returning, hopefully. Right, thank you. We can move on to agenda item 7 now, which is acquisition of land for travellers and future of the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group. Paul, I think this is your report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report builds upon previous report brought to this committee back in November of 24. There are a number of different elements to it, but there are 2 key issues for members to consider this evening. So taking the first of those, when we reported back to you in November, we brought the Stage 2 ARC report and the recommendations contained within that. And members may recall that in light of the challenges that this council has faced in trying to identify permanent traveller sites, one of the recommendations in the ARC report was that we needed to perhaps consider identification of land opportunities at a much earlier stage and be able to respond in a much more agile manner than we do by following our conventional council procedures. The procedures that we have to follow based upon our current regulations are outlined at paragraph 2.2, and you can see that that is a process containing 7 different stages. It needs to align to council meetings unless we are to call extraordinary meetings to debate these issues. And inevitably, it doesn't allow us to respond in an agile manner. So this is a report which is seeking to respond to those recommendations from the ARC Stage 2 report. It does propose a means of putting in place arrangements such that the council could respond to opportunities with appropriate controls in place. And it's really for members of this committee to determine whether you think those arrangements are satisfactory or not, because this could be addressed in a number of different ways. But in a committee structure of governance, we don't have the ability for an individual member to exercise delegated authority on behalf of the whole council. So inevitably that delegated authority needs to be taken by an officer, but clearly given the significance of this particular issue and the potential likely expenditure of public monies, then there clearly needs to be senior member engagement and oversight. So that's what's proposed in paragraph 2.8 of the report. There is a proposition there to deal with the potential acquisition, and the recommendation seeks to identify the fact that council has already set aside a reserve of £200,000 to potentially acquire land for a traveller site. The second part of the report deals with the issue of the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group, and the basis for bringing this forward is that clearly we are approaching the council AGM. There is an opportunity for council to reflect upon not just this working group but other ways in which the council conducts its business, but it did seem an opportune moment to actually pose the question as to whether it is the will of this committee as the parent of that group to effectively consider whether it is considered that that group needs to continue. Does it need to continue in its present form? Does its form change? Do any of the existing terms of reference need to be changed? So this is very much an open invitation for this committee to determine how it sees the future of that Gypsy and Traveller Working Group, and it's for you to decide this evening how you wish to proceed on that basis. You'll see that there are 5 recommendations within the report. The final recommendation is that should the members of this committee tonight agree to those delegations being put in place, it will require a change to the council constitution in terms of the delegation currently exercised by the Estates and Facilities Manager, and it will also require the existing reserve of £200,000 being brought into the capital programme, and that can only be a decision taken by council at the appropriate time. So there's quite a lot in there, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions that members may have.
Yes, thank you, Paul. It is quite a complex report, as you say. Can I ask for members' questions, please? And Councillor Buttle to start with.
Thank you very much. Is the Permanent Travellers Site Reserve of £200,000, which is in our vault somewhere, does it need moving by full council, or does this to a space where it can be spent by officers and gentlemen, as it were, or does it, or can we just go ahead? Do full council have to approve this 5th recommendation?
Yes, only council can move a reserve into either the revenue or the capital programme. So that's covered in the council's financial regulations. So this matter would be reserved to the next meeting of council should this be approved this evening.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Whitehead and then Councillor Linthwaite.
Thanks, Paul. Excellent report, well set out. Could I just add just one piece of it that just kind of wonder whether you could just expand on why we've included it, which is around the acquisition of land through compulsory purchase. I just wonder why that's in this report, and what's the rationale for including it. I just fear that some members of the public may read that and kind of be a little bit worried that we would look to include these powers linked to our search for a traveller's site.
Yes, certainly, Chair, through you. The reason why that particular paragraph is identified is not so much to deal with the traveller issue per se, but clearly council has set aside other reserves for the potential acquisition of land in order to deliver your corporate priorities. So that may include the acquisition of land to provide an affordable housing scheme. So the reason why we've outlined it in this report is that a similar arrangement could apply to those circumstances, but clearly the initiation of compulsory purchase would be subject to a detailed report at the appropriate time. It isn't something we'd just engage in under a delegation. It would be a matter which council would have to consider and make a formal decision on. But it's just flagging the point that an arrangement could be made in that similar way to use council reserves.
Councillor Linthwaite.
Thank you, Chair. I may be showing my ignorance here. Paragraph 2.8, the procedures for purchasing land at auction, it talks about a review of the site against the council's agreed site selection criteria. What are they?
Okay, so when council first set the task of the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group to identify potential sites, there were a number of criteria which were set at that point. If my memory serves me right, it was the report of September 24, I think it was. Councillor Franks might correct me, I might even be a year out.
So sorry, this is the same criteria as we were looking at for the temporary tolerated sites and...
They are the criteria.
Right.
Now, the question that would need to be, or the decision which would need to be taken, is whether those criteria are capable of being satisfied. So given that they are the only criteria that council has set aside at this moment in time, that's what we would have regard to. And then clearly there would need to be a decision through this arrangement as to whether the criteria were such that that site is worth meaningful pursuit or not. Because in the absence of that, there are no other criteria for a decision to be made as to whether an opportunity should be progressed.
Thank you. I was worried that there was another set of criteria for purchasing.
If there are no further questions... oh, Councillor Wayne, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just interested to know that in the review at 2.8, there's a couple of things I just want to ask. And basically, have we an idea what percentage or how much is likely to go on consultants' fees and valuation fees and things like that? We've got £200,000. That's, I know it's a bit putting your finger up in the air, but at the end of the day, we do tend to spend a lot of money on this group of people. And the second thing, at C, 2.8C, says following the site acquisition, a published record of a decision is made. Will that be published, and it goes to council, but will that be published for all members of the public to see? Will it be an open document, and will any discussions in relation to that be in a public open meeting? Thank you.
Well, this is really for members to determine in terms of the process that you wish to follow. If I can pick up that last point. Clearly, at the point that that decision is published, the chances are the council may well have already acquired the land. So it's almost a debate about a proposal on a site that you are now in control of and how you move that forward. But this is entirely within the gift of you as members to put in place whatever controls and sanctions, if you like, that you feel appropriate. But that's the intention at the moment, that it would be made available to all members of council. It would be a public record that the council has acquired this land for this purpose, because you will have incurred the use of public money in acquiring it. In terms of the first point, how much would we spend on consultants? Most of what's outlined in Part A of paragraph 2.8 can be conducted in-house. So I've not assumed that significant monies would be spent on consultants. Clearly, if there is a particular constraint or an issue which requires further evaluation, it may be drainage, it may be highways, it may be electricity services, then there may be some cost involved in that, but we would look to do as much as we possibly can in-house.
Just, are we likely to be duplicating this? Is there, I'm just wondering about, you know, the 200,000's got to go to full council, but is full council a better place to discuss this whole matter? That's what I'm just wondering. And is there a reason why it can't be heard at full council? Thank you.
The reason it's brought to this committee is because the resolution back in September was that this report comes to this committee. But clearly, in terms of the financial aspects, that element alone has to go to council for approval, not necessarily the arrangements that are outlined in this report. The reason being for that is that this committee is the parent committee for all matters related to travellers. While some matters have previously gone to council, council is not the appropriate body given previous decisions that you've made under this committee structure.
Thank you, Paul. Oh, it's Councillor G, that's right, yes. He's round the corner.
Yeah, sorry.
Councillor.
Yeah, I just
You know, by putting this amount of money in this paper, and obviously this is not excluded from the public, does that somewhat sort of compromise us in a situation where we entering into a competitive bidding process? Because you're talking about auctions. You know, it sort of, could it raise the value of land that's not worth 200,000, or could it put somebody on notice of where our limit is? I mean, is that, are we going to be in a difficult position?
Well, the reason why I've had to mention the 200,000 is because we need a delegation in which we can act up to. And 200,000 is the only amount of money the council has approved for this purpose. That's not to say that that is your budget to be utilised on any site acquisition. Clearly, if a site is worth 50,000, and the due diligence exercise that you've gone through indicates that, irrespective of what your budget is, you would only go to 50,000. So, as I say, there needs to be a ceiling of the delegation limit, otherwise this arrangement can't be put in place.
Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, we've got 200,000 possibly for land acquisition. I mean, hopefully that would be by closed bids, which would give us a better advantage. But the expense only starts there, doesn't it? You know, we will then have to have the money for the sites, for the facilities, for the drainage, the electricity, etc. etc. Where have we allocated that already, or does that have to come as well?
The only budget that has been set aside for travellers is the 200,000. So if you couldn't acquire a site and provide the site within that financial envelope, then further monies would have to be approved by council through the capital programme at that time.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. My question is a procedural question. We've nothing in the report about it, but the Gypsy travellers are people what should know about these sites. Will they be taken to the sites before the work starts and show them the site? And if they are unhappy with it, are we going to force them to go there? I hope not. But and if they're not happy with it, it'll come back to council, won't it? Or to this committee.
I think that's a difficult one to answer, because clearly in any auction situation, and you're looking to acquire land or premises in competition with others, the first thing is we wouldn't want it to be, we wouldn't want the council to be put at a competitive disadvantage by thinking that effectively we've got to be using significant amounts of public money and effectively have to pay over the odds to acquire that land. So part of this does have to ensure that we are delivering best value for public expenditure, and inevitably there is a need for some degree of privacy to be maintained, and this is where the difficult balance is in terms of making sure that there is significant or adequate degree of political oversight at a very senior level, because it's you as members who are committing the council to a particular course of action. It's not the officers. The officers can advise and guide, but the actual decision is one for council, which has to be exercised, as I say, in consultation. But nonetheless, this is such a sensitive issue, there has to be political engagement at a senior level in order to give the go-ahead as to whether to proceed or not. And it may well be on a site-by-site basis that you will consider what level of engagement you might have with all manner of different individuals. But as I say, that's really a matter for you to determine this evening.
Yeah, just come back. Even with the temporary sites, if they are approved, will the travellers and gypsies be taken to the site and give them their opinion? Or are they to be forced onto the site?
Well, the temporary traveller site issue was debated in council in December, and those decisions are in the course of being implemented, so this isn't intended to cover that situation.
We didn't discuss, did we, taking the travellers to the sites to show them the sites? I don't think so anyway. I can't remember discussing that.
Well, as I say, that decision was taken back in December for the reasons that members consider.
Probably something we never did, yeah.
Well, I would just add that we have had very active involvement with the Gypsy and Traveller Liaison Service, who pay close kind of have close relationships with the families involved. So I think we have made every stride, Peter, to sort of...
I've not been to some of the sites, they've never seen them. I mean, they've seen Matlock Path, obviously.
Next question is Councillor Butler.
I'm wondering how this feeds into our local plan work, because we have a local plan which is going to need Gypsy and Traveller stuff, sites with decisions and like a reasonable assumption that we will be able to take the local plan forward. Will this help us get a local plan through if we've organised ourselves to go out and get ourselves a Traveller site?
Absolutely. As members have previously been advised, given the fact that there is a proven need for the provision of traveller sites in the district, if you don't address that need, either by direct site provision that exists or by the allocation of land in your local plan, you will not secure adoption of that local plan. So we're effectively running two parallel approaches to try and solve this at the moment. The local plan process is absolutely the right process to identify land for this type of use. However, there is an issue of timing, in that clearly we have traveller families to whom we currently owe legal duty. Those families are not currently accommodated on a permanent site, and therefore if a site opportunity presents itself in advance of the local plan, then we would have to bring that through the process of this committee and in due course probably council if financial commitment is required, and then decision could be made in parallel to the local plan process. So it is a little bit chicken and egg, but absolutely you can't move your local plan unless you've got this issue addressed.
Could you give me a sort of an outline cost for actually not managing your local plan? What would that cost us if we don't do this and we don't get a local plan through because we have failed to, create a site or identify a site? What would the actual cost be to the council or to the people or the residents and whatever?
I think that's a really difficult one to answer. Clearly there is a financial cost in terms of accommodating families on sites which may not be specifically designed for that purpose. But I think the bigger issue is the environmental cost, in that if you don't have a local plan, you can't control and guide development to the locations that you want to. So I think that is a far greater impact, because you will see speculative housing development, you will get planning by appeal on a significant scale, as we've experienced in recent years because of the 5-year land supply situation. So I don't think you can approach it from the point of view of just a financial cost, albeit there is a cost. I think it's more an environmental cost and able to control development, which is a greater risk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the answer to Councillor Butler's question is the local plan would be found unsound if it didn't have a proposal. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move recommendations 1, 2, 3 and 5. And I think I'd like to return to recommendation 4 once we've debated my proposal to move 1, 2, 3 and 5. I think the report is concise and straightforward and gives us as members a straightforward decision to take, which I'm proposing that we support. The Chair and I discussed prior to the meeting the question of member oversight of expenditure of the scale which is suggested in paragraph 2, and therefore in consultation with the Chief Executive, we would suggest to you that an addition is made to paragraph 2, which says that this delegation is exercised in consultation with the leader, deputy leaders, and chair of the Governance and Resources Committee. That the Chief Executive and the Chair and myself feel provide sufficient member oversight of the decisions which formally delegated to the Estates and Facilities Manager. So formally moving with that addition to recommendation 2 that we support recommendations 1, 2, 3 and 5. Thank you, Chair.
Can I ask if officers have got the amendment drafted?
Can you just repeat?
Yeah.
Yes, semicolon after site. This is the last word. That this delegation is exercised in consultation with the leader, deputy leaders, and chair of Governance and Resources Committee.
Got that down, right? Thank you. Is there a seconder for Councillor O'Brien's on moving of recommendations?
Can I just bring a point of order, Chair? We've got to discuss this before we vote on it, haven't we?
We're not voting.
We need to discuss it.
We just have to second the recommendation.
Yeah, we have to I need a seconder to, well, that's Councillor Dobbs, right? Okay.
Happy to second it with, I think, a good idea to take 4 separately. So I'm happy to second Councillor O'Brien's motion with the additional sentence or phrase as recorded. Thank you.
So now it's been proposed and seconded. We can move into debate. So does anyone want to, Councillor Stuart Lees?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, at one time I was all for buying a piece of land and job done, but looking at this, I'm afraid it's a bit more in depth than what we first thought it would be under delegation and also the transparency side of it. If we're going to go and buy something at auction, you've got to know, probably, if you're lucky, a month maximum to get that deal in place. And with all these people getting involved, you're wasting your time going to auction because most of the people know about what you're going to pay, like it's been discussed earlier. And I think you'd be wasting your time going to auction because there isn't the capacity to get all your questions answered within that month, as I see it. So I think it's very, I don't think it's a very transparent way of doing it by buying at auction for the residents, for anybody that's involved, the travellers. It's just not practical to get it done in the timescale of an auction. Thank you.
Councillor Dobbs?
So I was just going to comment that I was entirely convinced by Councillor Lee's point made a few months earlier that this was the only way to move this forward. Well, there is transparency and there's Groundhog Day, isn't there? We haven't moved this forward. It hasn't been moved forward in 7 years. So this, I think we have to take advantage of a possible mechanism or else we will not have a solution. And not having a solution will lead to no local plan. And I emphasise, as I've said before, no local plan is not a place you want to be. We owe it to the residents of Derbyshire Dales to have a local plan. We are denied the site in our current local plan. We have to find a site. That is a major priority. And if this provides a route, I agree, not the most appropriate for a district council perhaps, but can we have a suggestion as an alternative mechanism? That will work because we need a process that will work because the consequence of failure to find a site is significant.
Thank you. Councillor Slack and then Councillor Linthwaite.
Thank you. Well over a year ago in the Travellers Working Group, I did suggest that we go to option, but I didn't suggest that we make it public knowledge. We got agents to do it for us and go to options. So if we're discreet and there should be no problem, Councillor Lees, people finding out that we are bidding. I mean, we're not forced to tell people we're bidding if agents doing it for us. So I think it's probably a good way of getting the ground, personally. and I support that. On the other issues, on the using the getting away with the Travellers Working Group, I think we're too premature on this. I mean, we've got all this planning to go through. It's not done yet. Aren't we doing that tonight?
Yeah, we are, but separately.
Yeah, I'll come back to that then. I'll come back to that. Well, I thought I'd do it, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with a lot of what Councillor Lees has said. In my experience, just the legal pack alone, it's supposed to be available 7 days before the auction, but in my experience, 1.5 to 2 hours before the auction is completely normal. I rang Bagshaw's last week on behalf of a parish council, and they'd had a legal pack in 3 days before the auction, and we were all flabbergasted. So it is a high-risk strategy. However, I think it's worth pointing out that it is just another string to our bow. As we said when we discussed this first time round, what we've done so far hasn't worked yet. So it doesn't mean this is our only option for acquiring some land, but it does add another string to our bow, and I think that's a reasonable way of looking at it, that it does give us other options.
Thanks, Chair. Just to address the transparency point, I think, yeah, the purchase of land could be taking place without members of the public knowing exactly what's happening. But at that point, nothing's, as far as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, nothing is approved in terms of a site actually being put there. It would be, as Paul just said a few minutes ago, on public record that the land had been purchased and for that purpose, so then it would be in the public domain, and that therefore there would be transparency at that point. And then I believe we'd have to go through planning applications and so on, which will be on full scrutiny as well. So while I understand Councillor Lees' concerns in the initial stage, I think in terms of the actual process of developing the traveller site, that I have no particular qualms about lack of transparency, because there will be transparency at all subsequent stages. And if as a result of that transparency it's deemed it's not an appropriate site to develop, the council will have the asset of the land, which hopefully they could sell on, so that we're not exposing ourselves to huge financial risk.
Any further? Oh, Councillor Franks. Councillor Butler. Sorry, can I call Councillor Murphy first?
Oh, Councillor Murphy.
Yes, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I've received many inquiries on this particular agenda item, more than I've ever received on anything else over the years. Residents are concerned that we should be considering giving delegated powers to the officers to spend up to £200,000 at auction or purchasing land privately for a traveller's site. It's still fresh in the minds of residents what happened with the Hasker Farm traveller situation. Many residents were angered and disappointed by the actions of officers in the case, and have not forgotten the lack of professionalism shown by the District Council. The reputational damage done to the council over this one case is still fresh in the minds of many. When I think of the many positive things the council has done, it's all sadly undermined by the lack of transparency in this one case. It's the case that people bring up quite often, and they never talk about all the other positive things we've done. We must remember there are two serious complaints about Hasker Farm, one of which is still active and needs further actions from the District Council. Sorry, I thought I was going to go into interrupted then.
We're debating Hasker Farm. It's all been
No,
been
but it's
before
context to
and
what.
referred to.
But the thing is, Chairman, this is a point that is brought up to me as an example where people feel that we were let down, and they're very concerned that we should be giving delegated powers to officers. You know, I heard what was said earlier on this evening, that all the complaints are put to bed and there's no further actions and whatever. I have it on good authority that one complaint is still live and isn't going away anytime soon. They're still looking for answers and whatever. I realise we're not here to debate Hasker Farm, but we have to sort of consider that happened in the past, and people are still wary of us making decisions on traveller sites, whatever. Now, I personally think this is a situation where we should keep the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group. If anything, we should strengthen it.
We're not debating that item yet. That's
Chair, point of order. This is, I
recommendation
think it's a
4.
pre-prepared statement, which is not according to the item here. And I think I might know whose authority that it might have come from, to be honest. And I think it is less than we would expect of this
Peter,
council.
please, don't be silly. You're trying to tell me that I haven't got a thought in my head. I was heavily involved with Hasker Farm because residents contacted councillors and wanted to discuss the issues and the fact there was a lack of transparency.
We're not debating that this evening, though. You've seen the answer to the residents' question tonight.
So what you're trying to do is just close me down.
Yeah. Barbara.
Yeah, it's members. What the committee have been asked to do tonight is to agree the procedure for the potential acquisition of the land, and that the consultation process relating to the identification and provision of permanent sites is amended to take account of the reduced timetable in land auction. And that is what members of this committee resolved back in November. As the Chief Executive's pointed out, in a committee authority, it is simply not legally possible for a single member or for members to make a decision outside a formal committee meeting, hence the wording in the report of the delegated authority with all the checks and balances and consultations with the members, which the Chief Executive has referred to. But what we're talking about now is agreeing the potential process for acquisition of the sites. So far as the future of the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group goes, we haven't got onto that part of the item.
Yes, thank you, Barbara. Councillor Franks.
I think what I want to say is that unless we add every string we can to our bow, we will not be identifying any land or able to purchase land. We have had a firm of consultants who've have experience in obtaining land and providing authorities with sites. They've been very busy for a year. They've identified land, but it's gone at auction. They've identified sites which would have been absolutely ideal, but it's most land in this area in Derbyshire Dales is sold at auction. Very little progress has been made in terms of having conversations with people and trying to work through the whole process. Unless we go to auction, I see very little opportunity at the moment of being able to purchase land. One of the questions I'm asked by members of the public is, well, what are you doing about finding a site? What are you doing about purchasing land? Why don't you get a move on? Why haven't we got a move on for 20 years? That's the question. Why are gypsies and travellers the ones, the really vulnerable two families that we have? Why is it acceptable for those to live on car parks for 6 years, 10 years, 3 years? We should be ashamed as a council for not progressing this, for not doing everything we can to purchase land. Whatever happened in the past, and it's not just Hasker, there's been other disappointments in relation to land and rumours and scandal and people being very upset. This is part of the reason why we've employed consultants who've got experience in purchasing land. They know what they're looking for. And they're very aware of the challenges in that. And I'm sure it's my understanding that the consultants will still be involved in identifying land, as we don't have the officers' capacity at the moment to identify. And they'll still be searching and talking to landowners. And it's not just auction. We just need to keep going and chipping away. And one day we're going to get somewhere. It's very sad what's happened in the past. It's almost as I get this constant feeling from that side of the room that you don't want to progress this, that you're very happy with travellers living in non-conservative areas, car parks. And that's the impression. It's been going on for years. The people in Matlock and Matlock Bath just want movement. They don't want this to continue any longer. They want permanent sites by whatever means. And there is no excuse for not trying every avenue to purchase land, to provide sites. Yes, we have to be careful. Yes, there has to be due diligence. And we will get there in the end. All above board in the end. But when purchasing anything, you're not going to announce it to the public. If you were buying a house, you won't say, "Ooh, I'm buying this house and this is the price." But in case somebody steps in front of you and gets the house if they want it. You know, there has to be some aspect of confidentiality along the way in the beginning process.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. Can I just add to that? Of course, several of us on this council are aware of the time and effort that was wasted on Nabhall Lane, Tansley, some years ago. That was pointless in the end, and it was a site that was never going to be suitable. And a lot of time and effort was spent investigating that site by the previous administration. Can I call Councillor Whitehead now?
Thanks, Chair. I really don't have a problem with Dermot kind of raising the concerns from his own perspective. I may not completely agree, though, Dermot, but I think he's totally right. We should always learn from our past so we don't make the same mistakes again. One thing I'd point out, though, is that I'm not aware that we had this delegated process in place for Hasker Farm, which may probably have caused some of the problems. So actually, by creating a process, that creates transparency in itself, because, as Councillor Archer said earlier, we then have the other layers of transparency that filter all the way through the decision-making process. Just finding a piece of land isn't the solution to us getting a traveller's site. It's just a piece of land. But as Marilyn says, we need to use every tool at our disposal. We've not found a solution for this for, well, forever, and we've not tried this. So we should try it, because you know what? The alternative of just having temporary tolerated sites or illegal encampments in our communities, in our car parks, is not tolerable anymore, and it shouldn't be tolerable for any member of this council. Therefore, we have to have a solution. That solution has to be permanent sites. And if we're missing out on permanent sites because we don't have the right tools in our toolbox, that's absolutely bonkers. So we need to get the right tools. We need to come armed so we're ready to go. And I think this is one of the solutions. Only one of them, but this is one part of the solution to help us do this. So I fully support all the proposals in here, and I also look forward to talking about the positive benefits of the working group in a minute.
Next, Councillor Butler, and then Councillor G.
Thank you, Martin. I think Nick's pretty much said everything I was going to say. Every point. The only thing I've got left, I won't repeat the same stuff, because I absolutely accept that the Hasker Farm process went absolutely awry, and I'm hoping we've learnt from it. The complaints were partially upheld, and we've changed the way we're doing stuff, and I hope that this is within a sensible democratic process, and that's really what I want it to be. Obviously, it's slightly scary as being one of the people who has to come up with a choice on this, but it'll do me good. We've missed campsites that have been up for auction. Campsites we need to move this forward. Thank you very much, Nick. I agree.
Councillor G.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't support this. I think the whole process is flawed. I think, it's been pointed out here perfectly about the situation with auctions. And this puts us in a difficult... Councillor Franks has said it herself, you don't publicise your price you want to pay. And that's exactly what we're being asked to vote for. It's in a print here, £200,000. So everybody will know. I don't disagree that we need to find a permanent travellers site, but this is not the correct process to do it. It's completely ill thought out. Obviously, we're going to discuss item 4 separately, but on item 1, 2, 3 and 5, yeah, I'm going to be voting against it. It's a flawed procedure. And on the issue about having traveller sites in conservative areas, that's ridiculous. We just need traveller sites in sensible places. Yes, we don't want them on public car parks. And whether it's conservative or other political group, it doesn't really matter. I'm sorry.
Other contributions from members who haven't spoken already? No. Councillor Lees.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, going back to Councillor Franks's comment on about, well, Councillor G's just mentioned about conservative areas and all this. I think you'll find Ashbourne has suffered its fair brunt of the travellers. We've got them at the moment. I think Ashbourne people know more about travellers than what probably anybody does, because we've had our fair share, as of Matlock Bath, everywhere. We all know, but to dismiss that we haven't had a share of them is wrong. We've had them more than most. And regarding the 200,000, what are you going to buy for 200,000 now at auction? I don't think you're even going to buy anything near the size that we require. We've had the land on the A6 that's just been chucked into the buffers, so, you know, what chance have we got at auction? Thank you.
Contributed already. Yes, Councillor Dobbs.
Okay. I think, if you just pick up on Councillor G's point, if you vote against this, what are you actually doing? Take a bit of time to think about it. Think where we are in the local plan development and the consequence of not having a permanent traveller site for that plan. I cannot understand how you can not support this, bearing in mind the lesson of history. Unless we take every opportunity to move this forward, it won't. So, on your consciences be it, but I think the stakes are pretty high.
Councillor O'Brien, if you want to sum up.
Yeah, just to sum up briefly, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lees, for the way you made the first point of your statement there. I do urge all members of the committee that we don't indulge in recrimination. Let's look to the future. Let's have robust debates and disagree, but let's do it in a civilised way. So thank you, Stuart. Yes, this is what this report is doing. What this proposal is doing is acknowledging that land and sites are often disposed of by auction, and the council currently has no opportunity to acquire land through that process. It's not proposing that we acquire land through auction, it's giving us the option. And as others have said, it's a string to our bow. I think the idea that which has been suggested that the process has not been thought through, I think that's very unfair on our officers. I think they have thought this through very carefully. It's been thought through carefully with our legal service. So I think that's not a comment that I think I would want to be associated. There is oversight. One of the most common phrases I heard from between 2019 and 2023 was trust our officers. That phrase rang in my head after every council meeting. Here we're being asked to trust not just trust our officers, but trust the leader of the council, the two deputy leaders, and the chair of governance and resources. Now I think collectively, if we can't trust that group of individuals to only take forward an auction proposal if due diligence has been satisfied and they're satisfied, then I think we're certainly not in a very good place. So I would commend those recommendations 1, 2, 3 and 5 to you, Chair and colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien.
We now vote on the amenders. In other words, do they want the vote that recommendation 2 is amended or not?
Yes, you're proposing, presumably, the amended recommendation number 2.
Yes, Chair. It's, the recommendations 1, 2, 3 and 5 with the addition that this delegation is exercised in consultation with the leader, deputy leaders and chair of Governance and Resources Committee.
And that's what I seconded.
Yeah, that's right. It's been proposed and seconded, so...
We need a vote on the amendment first. In other words, are they happy to accept the amendment?
Yeah, are members happy to accept this?
Point of
amendment?
order again, Chair. 3, we were going to discuss it separately. You stopped me in my tracks.
4 is separately.
But we've got to vote.
4, yeah, but
We've got to vote these
what
first.
3, you stopped me discussing it. Gypsy Traveller's side. You stopped Dermot discussing it.
Not that one.
No, it's there.
No,
There,
no,
3.
no.
3 is there. Future of 3. 3.1.
Yeah, no, we're on this one.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Peter said 3.
He did, yes,
You
but
said
you're
three.
looking
Yeah.
at the wrong list. I'm really sorry to say. This is the one we're missing, that one. We're doing
yeah.
that one, that one, that one, that one.
I apologise. I
No,
think
sorry about
I was further on the agenda and you were...
Can we vote first of all on the amended recommendation 2 that Councillor O'Brien has just put to us?
And members, you're voting as to whether you want to do your substantive vote on the recommendation as drafted, or whether you wish to vote in due course on the amended recommendation. So you're really voting whether to accept the recommendation on the paper, not to approve the recommendation.
Yeah, I'm not quite clear what that means, but in my experience, we should be voting on the amendment to start with. Yes, so all in favour of the amendment that Councillor O'Brien has put forward then? Against? Abstentions?
1 against.
2 abstentions.
2 abstentions. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Right. So the amendment.
So the amendment wins, so therefore, can we have a vote then on recommendations 1, 2, amended, 3 and 5?
Yeah.
All in favour? Thank you. Against? 1. Abstentions? 3. Right. Thank you. So now we go on to...
Can we just vote on... Can you just put your hands up again, members, on the recommendations
Substantive.
1, 2, 3 and 5?
Yeah. The last vote again. Yeah, substantive, that's right. Right. Who's got those? Against? Oh.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
We've got 15 votes, members, and we're calculating with 16 members here.
I abstain.
Yeah, we've got 3 abstentions. How many abstentions were there?
Well, 3.
4.
Oh, 4 now.
4, right, yeah.
Oh, right.
Okay,
Yeah, that's it then.
fine.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so
is that clear now?
Yeah, the
Right.
recommendations are approved.
Yes. Right. Well, that's supported then, so that's been moved and supported. So we now move to recommendation 4, that the committee determines its position in regard to the future of the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group.
Thank you,
So
Chair. May I move
Yes, you
a
can. Yes.
recommendation here? Chair? I would like to propose to colleagues around the table that the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group is disbanded. The reason for that recommendation is that, in my opinion, the work of the group as envisaged and set down by this committee is now completed, other than in relation to permanent sites. However, the identification of such permanent sites is now part of the review of the local plan, and therefore discussion, debate and decisions will take place within the local plans subcommittee, which reports to this committee. This will ensure that all decisions are completely open and transparent, with the public in attendance if they wish. In addition, the outcome of the commission awarded to ARC consultants in relation to the identification of sites for travellers will be reported to this committee. So on that basis, Chair, I would like to move that the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group, we thank them for their work to date, but they are now, their group is now disbanded. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dobbs.
Happy to, Chair. I think probably the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group would like to bow out, and after a pretty formidable work.
Move to debate now. Did you want to speak, Councillor Franks?
Yeah, I think I agree with ending the group. I think over the past 18 months or so, we have done an extraordinary amount of work, a lot of work, some members more than others, in terms of additional work on the side in supporting officers in putting together the consultation and going through that. And in attending consultations that went throughout the districts and in responding to members of the public. I think our achievements have been, which there's a whole list of things that we've actually done from the early days, coming up with a code of conduct, identifying why, what was holding us back from trying to move forward, identifying a permanent site. And one of the first issues that came to mind was the fact that Rob's department just hadn't got the staff, hadn't got the staffing to carry this forward. So one of the first recommendations we made was to appoint additional staff, and council approved for one additional member of staff to help move this forward. Sadly, the recruitment process didn't come up, we didn't manage to find anybody, or the officers didn't manage to recruit anybody who was suitable to take that forward. And this is how we came to then come up with using a firm of consultants. And via Rob, I think he did identify a very suitable firm that have helped local authorities bring up forward sites, permanent sites in the past. They have struggled, and all their feedback to the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group, they have been struggling to find appropriate sites to purchase. And one of the reasons is they're entering into discussions with people, but then auctions occur and that land's no longer available. The other thing we've done, we went through vamping up, if you like, the how temporary sites were assessed. We've re-looked at all the temporary possibilities and reassessed car parks and other land. And we've come up with a design which I know some people and some members of the public aren't happy with, which the council in December approved, and trying to make site improvements to Matlock Station, and also council approved using Roseley part-time over the summer. And we've now got planning applications in for that. There's officers have to move forward on the other approved sites, but they can't do all the work. They are limited with their time, and they have been very committed, and they've received an awful lot of criticism, both from members and from members of the public, about the work on this, and I can't praise them enough. We've had the most they've really been pulling out all the stops. They've dedicated a lot of time to the whole issue of temporary sites over this past 12 months. And they're now getting criticised again for not putting forward all the sites and planning at the same time. It's, you know, I just can't believe that people think that we have that amount of staff in these offices. We don't. We're short-staffed. But the others will be put forward eventually. There's hurdles to overcome with the others. But meanwhile, there is absolutely no purpose for a Gypsy and Travel Group to be involved in these things. We're not involved in preparing papers for planning. We're not involved in any discussions about purchases with landowners. It's not appropriate for us to do that. It's all moved on. There is very little we could actually do and advise now in terms of permanent sites, how they should be designed. It's all there. It's all government recommendations, and you don't need a Gypsy and Traveller Working Group to be involved in that. And it should now become part of the review of the local plan. It should now become part of this committee structure. There's no reason for another layer, if you like, of governance of this. It's totally unnecessary, and basically would just waste a whole number of hours of other people's time repeating what other people are going to be doing anyway. So I can't see a point in continuing it at this juncture any longer at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. And at this juncture, can I thank you for all the work that you've done on this subject for the last couple of years. It must seem longer than that, no doubt, but it's been quite stressful, I think, for you and your colleagues on that working group, but particularly you as chair of that group. So, thank you. Right, Councillor Chapman, and then Councillor Whitehead.
Sorry, Peter. Thanks, Chair. I'm going to sort of put an alternative proposal forward. It follows along a little bit from Councillor Franks. But I was going to be unkind and say I agree with removing the Gypsy Traveller Working Group as removing a level of impedance, but that's too unkind, and I take that back. It's like following the old adage, committees should always be an odd number and three's too many. That's what we sort of need to have that agility. But after everything is resolved and settled and we've got them all in Happy Valley, we'll still need to be working with the Gypsies to continue that. So I would suggest my proposal would be to stand down the group, if that's not the wrong military term, and reform as something like the Gypsy Traveller Liaison Group. Use the same people who've got the experience, who've been working with them and who know what they're doing, but just not be part of the auction process.
Could that not follow on in due course, rather than, I mean, if it's going to be liaising with Gypsies and Travellers?
Yeah, but it's just...
A liaison group could be formed in the future when we've got something to talk about.
But
in terms of
maybe I'm appeasing the working group, but I think that's just to give them recognition and to let them carry that.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Right, Councillor Whitehead next.
So I take a very different view. I'm not today, but I actually think that's a really good alternative suggestion. I absolutely recognise everything everyone said about what the working group has accomplished. But I think they've missed out the key point. The key point that where the working group have really delivered, certainly in my eyes and in my community's eyes, is it's put pressure on the council. Us as members, officers, to do the work, because even when I first became a councillor, there was a long period of time where we've seen we didn't do anything, and probably for years before that, we've had these up and down sort of. So I saw the function of the working group to really drive the work alongside officers to find solutions. We ain't found the solution yet. The temporary sites are not through planning, they're not in place, and the final solution, the solution of having a permanent kind of solutions for the travellers to come to, well, we're still nowhere near that. And I come back, we talked a lot earlier about scrutiny and the ability to sort of hold people to account. I think the working group have done that really well. It's also allowed us as a wider council to hold them to account. And I think the quality of the debate, whether you agree with the proposals or not, has been really high on a very difficult subject. And a lot of that has been linked to the processes we've put in place. So I was really upset to see I felt that the reason why this was in the report was to allow it to be voted down and to be taken away. I think it's the wrong move. I think it's absolutely the wrong move. Because, yeah, we maybe have commissioned ARC to go and find some sites, but we haven't delegated our powers to ARC. We still need to scrutinise what's going on. We still need to be able to challenge our officers when solutions come before us, particularly if we're now going to have the option that we've just agreed, where we're going to offer delegated powers to our officers and our leaders to go and spend up to £200,000. The local plan committee will not offer that level of scrutiny and drive to keep this kind of going forward. I really plea with the committee to vote against Peter's recommendation, and I'd be very happy to sort of have an amended working group. But to get rid of the working group altogether, I think sets us back. And I guarantee that we'll be here in 6 months' time, and I will tell you it was a bad decision if we've not moved forward. So I absolutely plea. May have faults, but it also achieved a lot, and I think it could still serve a really, really important purpose.
Yes, Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Nick. You've said about everything, I believe. First of all, I'd like to thank Tim and Rob and Marilyn and Laura for working on and Sue for working on the Gypsy Travellers group. I think we've put a lot of hours and we've done a lot of site visits. We've done an enormous lot of work in that time. I don't think we failed. I do not think we failed. I feel like a football manager, really. We might get the sack even if we don't get promotion. So we haven't got promotion, unfortunately. We will get it one day. But the fact is that we have really done a lot of work, and I think we've got the option is to take it over, ARC take it over, and we've worked with that in mind. But to disband it now would be wrong, totally wrong, because first of all, the planning permission on these sites are not through. Are we assuming that we're going to get planning permission? It's got to be worked, discussed and voted on, and you're definitely not going to get planning permission just like that. It might succeed, it might not. We don't know until it gets to the planning authority. But the fact is that if you disband it now and planning permission fails on some of the temporary sites, you're going to look a egg on your face, aren't you? You disbanded the group and then it's failed. Let's keep the group a bit longer yet. And same as Nick's just said, you can rename it to make, but don't vote for Peter's. I'm against Peter's suggestion entirely. It's the wrong thing to do. To keep the Gypsy Travellers Working Group a bit longer yet, few more, probably 6 months, and then look at it again. That's what I'm suggesting, and I hope you listen to myself and Nick on this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Archer.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, as Councillor Lees pointed out, correctly, Ashbourne has accommodated travel sites various times in recent years, and we've got a group in the area currently. In relation to how that relates to the group and whether we should disband the group, residents have suffered in Ashbourne and Matlock Bath and other areas because of the unsuitability of those sites, and therefore residents are very much in support of us finding permanent site and temporary sites, and that was the task given to the working group, and I think they've reached a point where they've gone as far as they can go at this stage. So I understand where the proposal comes from, because we have now got to sort of wait for this process to pan out in terms of the temporary sites, and we're obviously got the new strategy for a permanent site. So I suspect that feels like there's not much immediate work to be done, which is why this proposal's come forward. I would be keen to hear what Councillor Franks thinks about the suggestions around them of sort of mothballing it and maybe, temporarily putting it to bed, but with the idea of bringing it back if we need to, if other issues arise. In terms of the planning and so on, I don't see planning as part of the Traveller Working Group's remit. I think that's something that will come to the Planning Committee, and that's the work of the Planning Committee. So I don't think it needs involvement of the Traveller Working Group at that point. But I'd be interested to see what Councillor Franks thinks as a member of that committee, chair of that committee, in terms of whether it should be a permanent this sort of disbandment or whether it's a mothballing thing to potentially bring it back if we feel the need. I just need to make sure that I do just remind Councillor Lees as well. He referred to Ashbourne being a conservative area, but I think currently there's a majority of Lib Dems in Ashbourne. But, okay,
Right, yes, Councillor Murphy, if it's quite brief, because you've spoken already, so... Haven't you? Yeah, you're speaking about the traveller sites on the... Was that a question then? Yeah. Well, I suppose it is a separate date, I suppose, yes, that's right, yeah. Okay, right, thank you.
Right. Thank you, Chair.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I'm disappointed, and I will get to the point on the Travellers Group, and I was going to talk about the Traveller Group. I am in support of the Traveller Group remaining and probably strengthening it, actually, but only strengthening it with individuals who could have the flexibility and the availability to support our officers when they needed to make a decision. For me, it would act as scrutiny. And I think maybe in the past, that's where we've possibly gone wrong. There hasn't been enough instant scrutiny to support the officers, but also to sort of relay the concerns of the people that we represent. What I was talking about earlier was brought about by the concerns that were raised with me, not from, as Peter said, a pre-prepared statement written by somebody else. This is the consequences of conversations I've had with people who have seen what has happened in their area, and they're not very happy about it, and they've lost trust. So we need to rebuild that trust. I know, I get the impression you think we over here are sort of anti-travellers and we want to stop us finding a permanent site. Well, I'll remind you that it was in my division as a county councillor that we approved the site at Woodyards. Peter proposed it, I seconded it. Obviously, we were going to get probably a load of flack about it, but we thought it was a great site. Hence, we gave it planning permission. I did have a feeling in my heart that it was never going to happen, because there's history between this council and the people that own the land, and well, that's what I've been told. You're not aware of that information, so if you're happy, I'd share that with you and whatever. But no, I don't think we should get rid of the Traveller, Gypsy and Traveller Group. I think it's not redundant. Maybe if some of the people are on it, it'd be unfair for them to stay on it. If they've done a lot of hard work. Why don't we let some other experienced councillors help on that group? And you may not think we're qualified, but we do represent the people in some of these areas. So, and I do have a concern that I heard what Peter said about the people that are going to advise Paul and whatever. But just, there's nobody on this side of the room actually going to be part of that process, I believe. Is that true?
What process?
You know, where you said sort of that the chair and deputy chair and whatever are going to sort of liaise with...
Leader and deputy leaders?
Yeah.
And the chair of the GNR committee?
Of all the parties? Or committees?
No, the GNR committee, chair of the GNR committee.
Yeah, but what my point is, it's very alliance-driven. So anyway, this is about...
That's what happened in the past.
Sorry?
That's what happened in the past, Councillor.
Yeah, but we did listen to you, though. Anyway, I know you don't agree, so I would like to personally support keeping this working group, but it's not going to happen because you've got enough votes to stop us, so thank you.
Councillor Lees.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I totally agree with Councillor Murphy, Councillor Whitehead and Peter Slack. I think there's only myself and Peter that was on the original working group. It was quite a large number of us and it worked well. If anything, I do agree that the group should continue, but it should have more members on it. Thank you.
Councillor G, and then briefly Councillor Franks, as she's been challenged by Councillor Archer.
Yeah. First of all, I'm slightly bamboozled at the, is it Progressive Alliance has suddenly loss of love of extra transparency and extra groups and layers of this council. You know, it's suddenly gone out the window on this issue, hasn't it? As Councillor Murphy points out, the decision-making on the buying the land is completely taken away from the council in a transparent way because it's entirely kept with the leader and the deputy leader and the thing. Councillor Whitehead, he put it perfect. I mean, this job's not done yet. Obviously, it's not done. You know, you put a bit of money aside to look for a land, but you need some transparency to see what's happening so you can see what the direction of the travel, or let's say direction of the travellers, is going to be. So, no, I can't support the idea of disbanding this group. You need to keep it and, yeah, make it more robust rather than less. Thank you.
I just wanted to respond to Councillor Murphy and the remark about the land on the A6. I too was on that planning committee, so I remember it well where we approved it, and I, like you, very positive. I don't have a history about it. I don't want to know the history about it. I was looking at it totally independently. I was very optimistic. And the reason that it hasn't been followed through was through very thorough survey and assessment, and not just one, but two. And both totally independent, the second one particularly, and the costs it was to actually be able to build on that site. I mean, we've been through the costs at a full council meeting, but the reason why it's never been sold over all these years is because it isn't suitable. And those surveys, we'd need too much money. We can't afford it, basically. It'd be ridiculous to spend that amount of money on a small site.
Councillor Chapman.
I'll be brief, Chair. My point wasn't about the function of the working group. My point was we need agility. We need to move fast on this when we go into auction. So we need to reduce the number of people who need to be involved. Cut that down, and that is no disrespect to the working group. It's just to try to get the whole thing moving. And when the more people you've got involved, the slower the process becomes. That's the reason. That's the point I was trying to make.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I'm with Councillor Chapman here on this one. When I came to the meeting this evening, I was still sitting on the fence over this question. I was particularly swayed by Councillor Whitehead's comment about having some kind of push. Yeah, I think Maryland and the majority of the group have just been amazing in terms of the push and the focus that they've brought on this topic. But at the moment, we're waiting for planning permission. If planning permission goes through, then that's fine. That solves part of our problem initially. If it doesn't, then, as Councillor Slack says, we're in a different position altogether. So, I feel sort of standing down the group for the time being would seem to be a fairly sensible option, with an option to bring it back either for the next stage, i.e. once we've got a potential permanent site, or should planning permission fail. I think that would seem to me to be a fairly sensible use of our resources, ensuring that the officers have got that backup should they need it down the line. But in the meantime, we allow the processes to go through and see where we are after that.
Councillor Slack, be brief, please.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. Just to say, Councillor Chapman, we wasn't party to what Art was doing. We was completely, it worked independently, so there couldn't be any conflict of interest. So we wasn't party to that. We didn't know nothing about it. We're left to them.
Sorry, I wasn't referring to that part of it. I'm referring to the way ahead, to what we're about to take part in, not what's happened before.
Yeah.
And we're looking to make. I keep using the word agility, and we've got to do that. We've got to be able to react, and the less people involved, the quicker that will happen.
Yeah, we wasn't involved with when Art was negotiating with landowners, and we did work as fast as we possibly could. We've put a lot of hours on it. We worked hard on it. Thank you.
Did you want to speak, Councillor Wayne? Yep. Oh, you did? Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, if I can sum up, Chair. This is a really helpful debate to me, so thank you, colleagues. I would say at the outset, no one is more committed to working collaboratively than on this council than I am. And look where it's got me, as sitting as a non-aligned member. I support the principle of working groups. I think they're a healthy contribution to the work of this council. And I like Councillor Chapman's original idea that, in principle, the idea of a Gypsy liaison group is something which I would welcome. Not to address the immediate issues, but ongoing positive discussions with our traveller community to address the issues as they arise. I don't think the Gypsy liaison group is there to identify sites. I think it's about here and now issues. I think there is value in that, and I hope that Councillor Chapman will think about bringing that proposal forward at a future date. Councillor Flanks is quite right. It doesn't help our decision-making process if we have an infinite number of layers of different people having discussions about the same topic. So we need to avoid that. Those who think that the local plan subcommittee is some sort of dinosaur group of members who is not agile and is not fixed on its task, I think should come to one of the meetings where we have a very helpful and informed group of members from all parties who contribute very positively to discussions. All those members are quite capable of bringing matters to the attention of the subcommittee and driving them forward. And of course, all members are welcome to come to that subcommittee, as I think some have done, to put forward their suggestions and proposals. So I agree entirely about keeping pressure on officers and members, but I think the local plan subcommittee is driven by having to agree a local plan and bring it forward to this council by November, and that local plan has to include traveller site provision. So we're on that. The members on that group are fully aware of the need to identify traveller site. I listened in arriving at my proposal. I did take take counsel from a number of members from colleagues, and what I put forward reflects broadly, not unanimously, but broadly complements the views I heard. However, I am very much persuaded by the points made by Nick Whitehead and Peter Stack and Joanne that perhaps disband is too dramatic, and given the circumstances we're in relation to still not having tied down temporary sites, because you're quite right, Peter. You know, let us not prejudge the outcome of the planning process. You know, as co-chair of the planning committee, I've said on many occasions to members, I don't want to hear anyone give any hint of any predisposition or prejudgment of the outcome of that planning process. So I think perhaps with Peter Dobbs's consent, if someone would like to propose that we substitute the word disband with stand down, so that the working group is stood down, that would give the opportunity for, in future circumstances, if they arise, for this committee to reconstitute the working group.
Yes, with the proviso, of course, their terms of reference will have to be totally different. I mean, there's an awful lot of things implied by what's been discussed about their future role. I think we need to bear that in mind. So I think stood down, and when it is reconstituted, to have new terms of reference.
Slight amendment. Yeah.
Slight amendment. I think it still has the spirit of what was said before.
Right, okay. Have you got a contribution to make on that particular wording?
I just welcome this change,
right,
because I was really in two minds before, and this makes it much easier for me. Thank you.
Yeah, from slightly amended proposal from Councillor Bryan, just to substitute standing down for This is standing down. That's what he's proposing now. Standing down to replace what was proposed before. That's right. Can we have votes in favour then, please? Everyone in favour of standing down the Gypsy Traveller Working Group?
Against?
Against? 4, 5.
5. And abstain?
Abstentions? None. Right.
Yep. Okay.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. Right, thanks, members. It's getting very close to the witching hour of 8:30, so I don't know if someone wants to propose that we extend the debate until 8:45. 8:45. You propose that? Seconded by Councillor Walker, yes. Sorry.
Yep. Okay.
Right, we'll carry on with item 9, Ashbourne Reborn.
We need to resolve the
Yeah, that's
press and
right.
public, so we're voting on that.
But before we do that, we need to obviously
Vote on the resolution.
yes, we need to exclude the public and press. Not that there's anyone here. So to resolve that in relation to the following item, the press and public be excluded from the meeting as it's likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of proceedings, that if a member of the public were present during the items, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information within paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and further that in all circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exempt information outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information for the reasons set out in the report. So, can we have a proposer and seconder for that, please? Proposer, Councillor Dobbs. Seconder, Councillor Lees or Councillor, I don't know who came first, but Councillor Bates, perhaps, yeah. Right, all in favour of that?
Unanimous, is it? Anyone against? Abstentions?
No. pretty well unanimous, I think. Yeah.
We'll just turn the...
Councillor, yeah, you.
To ask, I'm a little bit concerned when items are taken away from public, because I just wanted to remind the council that this council is the public. And I was not sure about whether this item deserved to be excluded from the public, because I couldn't really see the point. I mean, I don't want to discuss the item because obviously I'm probably going to be outvoted on this, but I'm very concerned when this type of information is excluded from the public, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm just representing my community, where I've been voted in. And, you know, I think they deserve to be able to see, and I think they can make fairly sensible decisions on it. And so, yeah.
Councillor, if you've read the report, the officer's report on this, in terms of their explanation of why they think it should have been should be taken. Right.
So it's the councillor voting against the recommendation.
Yeah, can I suggest, Chair, that if members have questions, they can raise these in advance of the meeting, then you get a rational and sensible answer from officers rather than raising it at the meeting here.
Is the councillor against the resolution? Are you voting against the resolution to exclude the press and public? Yes. Right, so
Oh, right. I see. Right.
15 for and 1 against.
That's 15 for and 1 against then. Yeah. Right. Okay. Right. Can we progress then with this confidential, if you like, hostile vehicle mitigation proposal?
Excuse me, Chair, would you mind if perhaps some of us get some water?